So, you know, he was not really very happy. Now, what verse was I up to? 29, okay. Okay. So, David responded to his brother. Thank you, whoever said that. Now what have I done? Can I even speak? The word translated speak by NIV is the word dabar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing, I'm a little rusty with my Hebrew, excuse me please. Dabar, meaning a word, a question, or a cause. The New American Standard Version translates it like this. Was that not just a question? Can I just ask a question? And the King James Version translates it like this. Is there not a cause? Now, all three translations are reasonable defensive reactions that somebody could have when you're having your wrist slapped. But if the NIV or the NASV, this is the New International Version or the New American Standard Version, is the better translation, then David's response really has no further relevance to what is being said in the rest of the passage. However, if the King James Version, and I'm not a big King James fan, but if the King James Version, which says, is there not a cause? If that is the better response or translation, then that corresponds brilliantly with the rest of the dialogue. Let's see that. Verse 30. So he, David, then turned away to someone else and brought up the same question, the same matter. And the men answered him as before. Okay. Now we know David is up to something. Why was he asking again and again a question he already knew the answer to? He knew that Saul had spies scattered around the military units who kept him informed of the mood of the men, especially in times of great crisis. He also knew that a soldier could not act on his own initiative without authorization from the king, how much less himself, who was not even old enough to be drafted into the military. So if he wanted to take on Goliath, he would have to get permission to do so, and to get permission to do so, he'd have to have an audience with the king. So David keeps repeatedly asking the question and talking trash about Goliath, and his strategy works. So verse 31, what David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. Okay. If I had any doubt that David was gunning for an audience with Saul, that doubt would disappear when you hear how David approached Saul. In verse 32, before Saul even has a chance to say anything, David blurts out, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine is going to be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Wow. If I go to my dad as a teenager and I ask him to allow me to drive his new Audi on the basis of the fact that I've been successfully driving a go-kart in the neighborhood, the chances are my dad is not going to take me seriously. And the reason is because driving a go-kart is not the same as driving a $40,000 car. So if David is using the confrontation with the lion and the bear to strengthen his case for permission to confront Goliath, it must be because the two things are comparable. Okay? It has never been common practice for men to be successful in hand-to-hand combat with a lion and a bear. That's not just something that happens every day. So David is not trying to deny the mismatch between himself and Goliath. Instead, he's arguing that His argument is that for him to have killed the lion or the bear required, obviously, divine assistance. And if God saw fit to enable him to kill those animals when the only thing that was at stake was the life of a lamb, how much more would he be willing to give him success when the freedom of the nation is at stake? See, that's the argument that he's saying. Said a different way, David is saying that if his willingness to put his life at risk to fulfill his responsibility to his father constituted a sufficient reason, a sufficient cause for God to assist him, is there any question that the destiny of Israel to represent the true and living God on earth constitutes a sufficient cause to elicit God's intervention on their behalf? Dude should have been a lawyer. The question of whether or not your problem constitutes a reason or a cause that could elicit God's help is a huge question. If God is with us and for us and in us, then who can be against us? Amen. If God is with you and for you, though you seem powerless against the people or the circumstances that oppose you, the reality is quite the contrary. Nothing assures the positive outcome of a situation more than knowing that God is on your side. Therefore, the question, is there not a cause? Meaning, do the circumstances of your life warrant belief in the fact that God will take your side? Is huge. If God takes up your cause, that single fact alone changes everything. You don't have to care about what people say if God is on your side. You don't have to be concerned about what people do if God is on your side. You don't have to be concerned about the stage of the disease or the circumstances if God is on your side. You don't have to worry about the lack of money if God is on your side. You don't have to worry about your lack of connections if God is on your side. You will sleep like a baby and you will have peace that passes understanding if God is on your side. Because no weapon formed against you can prosper. With all the things that could go wrong in this life and all the variables that we cannot control, there's only one thing that we need to know when facing the giants that come against us. Is there not a cause? Is there a justification in my situation for God to get in the mix? A cause that would move God to act on your behalf is like an insurance policy. If your crackhead cousin Tito borrows your car and the insurance policy is lapsed, be afraid. But if you just renewed the policy for twice what the car is worth, get one of those lattes at Dunkin' Donuts and relax. Worry about your cousin. There are two closely related questions that come to mind when we ask this question, this issue. How can I know that my situation constitutes a cause that God would be willing to get excited about? And why would God care about my situation? The first question, how can I know? After David's great-great-grandson, King Asa, defeated the Cushites, the Spirit of God came upon Azariah, the son of Oded, and he went out to meet Asa, and he said to him, "Listen to me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you." See, Azariah was saying that the burden is on us to align ourselves with God. We must adjust our lives to him. We must first seek his kingdom and his righteousness. And then all the other things will be taken care of. Now, Asa's great-grandfather, Solomon, said, "The Lord works out everything for his own ends." Proverbs 16. God said to the prophet Isaiah, "So is the word that goes forth out of my mouth. It will accomplish that which I purpose and succeed in the thing to which I send it." See, everything begins with God's purpose. No surprise that Paul in the New Testament refers to God as Him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of His will. So to tap into the power of God, we must first tap into the purposes of God. As Paul said later in the same letter, to live as children of light, we must find out what pleases the Lord. Even Jesus said, I can do nothing of my own initiative. So the key to confidence about whether God will come through for you is to make sure that you are living life on His terms. You know, we have a tendency to want to negotiate with God, to want to carve out certain things in our lives that we want to hang on to, certain things that we think we deserve. And we're hoping that if we just do some of the things that we know please God well, that He'll cut us some slack in this other part of our life. Maybe there's something that you've been convicted about that you think that you need to surrender to the Lord. Maybe something about the way you associate with people at the office or on the water cooler, or the things that you laugh at, or the way you drive your car. Maybe there's something about the movies that you watch which you don't allow your kids to watch. Maybe there's something about just your thought life that you indulge on your own because no one can tell what's going on in my head. It's just me. Whatever it is, if you're trying to carve out some piece of your life that you can live on your own terms, and a crisis hits, you will never have confidence about whether or not God will come through, because that one thing that you were holding on to now becomes a liability to you. Now it becomes the thing that makes you question yourself and your status with God. John puts it this way.